All right. Welcome everybody to this episode of the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, a partner here at Thoughteum. We go live every week on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all social media channels, bringing you new leaders and new perspective on topics that matter most in the business world and in the world at large. And we are now 46 weeks in to our Navigating Now series. We're at the front end of season 2, and we've really been creating the space for some incredible discussion and really unpacking some of the topics that matter most in leadership today. Our goal with Navigating Now is really to create a community and a platform for people to share their stories and for us to really learn from others. And I think we have a lot to learn from today's guest. Today's guest, Sandhya Sur. She is the founder of No Straight Lines. This is a fascinating organization with several different dimensions to it. And we are going to unpack a little bit on career pathing and what it means to really take charge of your career, particularly those career paths that may not be following a straight line. And so we're going to be talking about non-linear career paths. And this topic is so important today as the data suggests, and we've been hearing anecdotally left and right, that people are focusing more and more on their career and their career path than ever before. And it's because of what we've all been through over the course of the last 18 months that people, feel even more strongly about working with passion and purpose. And because of that, we've seen a lot of folks making big choices for themselves and for their families. Sandhya today is going to bring us a little bit closer to what it takes to create and to navigate a non-linear career pathway. So I think all of us as individuals and as professionals can really learn a lot from today's discussion. Before we get started, we want to welcome everybody to the Navigating Now community. Those folks who are joining live via Zoom, feel free to say hello in chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to type those in. We particularly want to thank and welcome all of those folks who stop by on LinkedIn. We're so fortunate to be able to stream live to LinkedIn every week. We are so committed to the consistency of bringing this voice to our community as it grows week over week over week. And so you can count on us each week to bring this voice. And we're thankful for those who join via LinkedIn. So without further ado, Sandhya, how are you today? And welcome to the Virtual Roundtable.
Thank you, Anthony. I am doing great. We're in California, so it's super sunny outside. So I can't say anything could be better.
That's wonderful. Well, we're enjoying the 3% of the beautiful weather here in Chicago. It seems like this week and last have been quintessential Chicago summer, and it's also great to see things kind of opening back up, but I know it's different in different stretches of the country. So I hope you and your family are doing well in California. We've got so much to tackle today, and I do want to maybe take folks a little bit formally through your career path because I think it's so interesting. But I want to start with the name of your organization, No Straight Lines. Tell us about that.
So this is when I kind of switched my career path and I became an apprentice to a modern art painter. So he did exhibitions in Chennai in India as well as in France. And so this is when I had left neuroscience and I decided to go into art, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And he was like the quintessential teacher, though artists are thought to be very, giving leeway into whatever they do. They're very strict on like the basic principles of how you learn. And so he was very adamant that I had to have all these straight lines. And of course I had to like turn that on its head. And I'm like, can I do art without straight lines? So the first series of paintings I did had no straight lines. And I felt that was kind of my understanding. There is no straight line to getting to your pathway because most of the time you yourself don't know what you want. And it's through incidences and coincidences through life, you kind of get to where you think you want to be. And so that's why when I started the line, I was like, this is what I want it to be called, No Straight Lines. I feel like
Wonderful.
that's me.
Okay, so I love the no straight lines ethos and even the mantra. Tell us about No Straight Lines, the business.
So, No Straight Lines was my little haven. As such, it was, I wanted to create, I had been in the industry for a while and in the fashion industry, and we had to create all these lines. So, even though I designed the product, by the time I got to see the finish, it was such a long process and it was so stifling for me that I couldn't see the person at the end. You could only do that if you're in couture versus if you're generally working. And so I liked I like I design jewelry, and I liked being able, each piece is kind of a creation. So, and it's a concept, because jewelry to me is it's a story. Like when I have pieces of jewelry. I'm Asian, right? So the way I would get pieces of jewelry were from my grandmom and my mom, and they had so much of history behind them. Like there's a bracelet I have that my grandmom wore for her wedding, and I was like, that's a piece I want, because it's full of these memories. And every time you wear the piece, you're adding on to the memories and you're creating these new chapters. And so it kind of defines me to a certain extent, what I wear, because those are
Mm,
filled with memories, and I connect objects with feelings and memories. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with the jewelry, was to make these pieces for people and talk to them. And when I talk to them, I know this is who they are, this is not who they are. And we kind of make this piece for them, even if it's from certain lines that I have with concepts. That piece is always individualistic.
mm.
There's never going to be a repeat. You're never wearing what someone else is wearing, because you are so different from everyone else, and it means so many different things.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I'll ask one more specific question about your business, and then I want to zoom back out. Uh, Tell us about, so you're a jewelry designer. Like, tell us about that process, and tell us about then the business model that supports that process. Because we hear a lot about jewelry and luxury goods, and I know there's different aspects of the making of, the creation of, and the supply chain. Where do you sit on that, and what is your process?
So um, I'm a jewelry designer, but I also make my own jewelry, because I feel like as I make the pieces, they change. Um, it's a creative process that way. There are bases that I have that I pre-make ahead of time, and then I model it differently based on the person. So I have
Mm,
maybe like 50, 60 boxes of different sections that are kept, and multiple stones that are kept on a different side. And I have pieces already made based on my preferences. Uh, but I have people who walk into the studio and then they choose, kind of, they like this theme that I'm going with, but then they choose to make, um, like, arrange their piece for themselves.
okay. Okay.
I am not commercial because of this. And the only, I would do commercial projects only if it was for like a benefit, or if it was for a certain, like I was helping someone, like for a
Sure.
nonprofit. Versus this is because it's something for me. I just make it so it sustains myself. It does help that
Mhm.
my studio is in one of the biggest travel centers in San Diego. It's in Balboa Park, so it really helps that way, that it's right in the center, and I get to
Great.
talk to people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, so that's a piece of what you do. But let's zoom back out. The focus today is on creating nonlinear pathways, and I almost want to go back to um, your previous life. We always say our previous lives. It sounds like you've had several previous lives. But what really intrigued us was where you started professionally, and where you sit today are seemingly two completely different points. And so today we're really going to work to connect those 2 points, even if the line in between is completely zigzaggy and not straight, right? So from what I understand, your career really started in engineering, so industrial biotechnology, and you were interested in neuroscience. And so this is very specific, very technical, very scientific. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of your career path, and what landed you in biotechnology and engineering.
So I'm the quintessential Asian. I like, we all have to, so everyone I know is either a doctor, an engineer, or a computer engineer. So that's what I've known, and that's my life. But this was, and even for me, the outlet was art. I loved it, and I would always paint on the side. I would always be in charge of the art department or in charge of all these events, but I was never thinking that was a career path. I was always, okay, I'm going to do biotechnology or medicine, and I'm going to help people this way. This is how I can make a difference. This is how I can, at that point you're like, I want to change the world. And so that's how I went. I was like, I'm going to do science and I'm going to make a difference. Neuroscience actually happened because I had a lot of family who had neurodisorders. My nanny, when I was growing up in the UK, she had Parkinson's, or she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, but later they realized they didn't know what her neurodisorder was. And so that kind of led me into, I want to research neuroscience and I want to know how it works. And I've always been the type that I'm like, okay, this is a puzzle. I need to know the parameters. And so that way I can kind of change how I want it to, how I can change it to the way I want it to be. And that's, I think, it's also carried on to my jewelry.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Where did your desire to help people through the sciences, sounds like it came even more from your childhood? Tell us a little bit about that. Like when you were growing up, did you know that you wanted to go into engineering and the sciences? It sounds like you also had some family influence as well too.
I think you were always, like, you're always in the sciences, right? I mean, for me, it was always med school. It was always sciences. And I I was good at it, but I did not find it. The only part that made me want to do it was if I could help someone doing it. It wasn't, now that I think, for me, fulfilling what I want was through art. But in order to do science, it had to mean something to me. And I felt if I was doing it where I was helping someone, then that was meaningful. And I could do this. I could push myself through studying all of this in order to get to that point where I was helping someone. I think that was what I felt. Though recently I did I tied up with Autism Foundation, and I was able to help people. And I realized you don't have to do science, or you can be you and still make a difference. You can still find a way to do what you want to do, as well as help the people you want to help.
Yeah. And finding your passion enables you and puts you in the best position to help people. And I think what I'm hearing you say, coming from a first generation Italian family as well too, with very high career expectations, you don't necessarily have to be a dentist, doctor, lawyer, attorney to help people or to make an impact, or even to make a living. So it's interesting too. I think we all go through our evolution of understanding some of the expectations of ourselves that we had, that our families had, that have influenced our childhood, and therefore influenced if we're so fortunate, our education, our studies, maybe even our first and second choices in career, you then found yourself at a real inflection point in your, not just your career, in your life. And you decided to move a bit and to take a line that was maybe not as straight and narrow as you thought. Tell us about that point. What was that point, and what were some of the realizations that you had come to outside of I want to help people and sciences might not be it? What else was behind that?
I think till that point, I was surrounded by people. I was surrounded by family and friends who all had the same notion of this is what you should be doing. And, your art's like a hobby on the side. You cannot make a living out of it. So that was kind of um, the society that you're surrounded by. And hence that kind of makes you think that, oh, that makes complete sense. Why would I do anything else? Um, Going to the neuroscience PhD, I was actually lifted out of that whole that whole society of thinking, and brought to Northwestern, where everyone had a different view. Everyone thought that what they were doing was amazing, and they had so much fun doing what they did. You know, it could be someone in theater and someone in the science lab. They all believed in what they were doing and they enjoyed it. And I think it came to the point where, I think it was like you're good at what you're doing, but do you really want to be doing what you want to do? And I was, it came to the point that I did not want to wake up and extreme, go through that routine, the boredom. Don't get me wrong, like art, design, everything has those days where it's so extremely boring that you want to tear your hair out. It's so repetitive. But at this point, I was like, this is, I don't even know why I'm doing this, because I don't want to get up and face the day. And I don't think I'm that kind of a person. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it just, and I was lucky that I was surrounded by my boyfriend and a lot of friends who were very supportive of me choosing what I wanted to choose.
Yeah,
But I also
that's
did,
wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
so I want to stay here at this inflection point because I think what you're bringing forward is the importance of reflection, right, and looking back and acknowledging just exactly where you're at, acknowledging some of the feelings and emotions that you have, even just waking up every day. And I always love to say, like, if you string together a handful of days where you wake up and you're not loving what you're doing, like that's a real indicator. That's a real warning shot, if you will. At the same time, I totally agree with you as well too. Even when we're doing what we're doing, there are days that we're going to wake up and not love what we're doing. So you almost have to trend for, am I waking up happy? Am I not waking up happy? And really, really take that into account. You decided that you needed to go in a different direction, and from what I understand, this wasn't necessarily an overnight thing. Like you didn't decide one day that you wanted to be a biotechnologist and the next day you wanted to be an artist. I understand that you went through the process of reinventing yourself, and you may have used traveling and living in different countries to do that. So tell us a little bit about the process of reinventing Sandhya and not necessarily your career, because let's start with you, the person first, and it sounds like the career followed.
So, as I, so I think it's to do with comfort versus what you're not comfortable with. I was very comfortable with science. It was so comfortable because I had this whole pathway, blocked out for me, or I know there are multiple versions that I could do, and these were all known. They were all known factors, and so I did kind of apply to. There's a Kellogg program that mixes biotechnology, neuroscience, as well as business, and I did get through. And I also went and spoke and tried to go into speech therapy, which I also did get through. But it was it was coming back to that same circle. And at that point, I realized if I didn't leap, if I didn't force myself into a position, which goes back to my childhood, which I probably should talk about too. If I didn't force myself into that pathway, I was going to go back and be super comfortable. So the whole point was just leave. I know I want to do art. Just figure out the first step and just jump. Because if that's something you want to do, you will rise to the occasion, and that's always happens. Well, while I was growing up, we moved to maybe 4 different countries. So every time we moved, it was a whole new group of friends, because at that time there was no phone, there was no internet. I mean, well, nothing that I could use at that point. Um, sorry. There was no internet, and um, and there was only letters, so you couldn't really keep in touch with your first grade friends through letters, or and by the time you got back, it didn't work. So, and every time we moved to Riyadh, we lived in the UK, we moved to Riyadh, so I had to learn Arabic, so it now that I, like, in retrospect, if you think about it, it's like mind-boggling that that's something that you could do, because everything changes. Your school, your friends, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to do everything. And it, at that point, I hated it, but in retrospect, it was great, because I realized that every time I moved, I could always step up to the plate. I could always learn all these different things. And plus, every time we moved, I could try something else different, because I would do theater in another country versus I would do tap dancing in the UK. And it just also gave me so much confidence that you don't have to be that label. You don't have to be that one person. There's so many facets to you, and you don't have to be scared to do it. It's just you're holding yourself back. And so when I try to do something, sometimes I just recreate the move where I'm like forced to have to do it, because now I've kind of cut out all my escape routes. And I just have to do it. And I feel like I always find a way to be able to do it.
You build almost a certain tolerance to change. I'm curious, as you kind of moved around, how did you take with you, your learnings from, let's say, the previous move, or like even in your career? I think when we were preparing for the show, we talked about burning bridges. And, for somebody who is so mobile and so seemingly transient in their life and in their career, how do we ensure that we don't burn bridges, and that we make sure that we bring forward and take forward those relationships and those aspects of our career that are extremely valuable, and because sometimes when we make these pivots, it's easy to just leave behind.
I think for me, all these different all these different fields, or all these different things that have happened or are happening, are all superficial. At the end, you have grown in certain ways of how you respond, how you talk to people, and those are what you bring wherever you go. If you're talking about knowledge, that's something you can always brush up on. But if you're talking about as a person, you are constantly growing through this change, and that's what you're bringing. And being able to, as I've been moving, I realized that it's not about the place. It's always about the people. You're always, there is, if I remember a certain time, it's never about, oh, this place was amazing. It was, these people were amazing, and this is what they did, and this is how we did things. And I think I have brought that into whatever field I have, and I've drawn conclusions, and also just perspectives. every place you go, there's so many different perspectives on the same object. And so
Hmm.
you actually learn to not have a perspective and to be open to everyone's perspective. So you're not saying this is black or white. You really imbibe that everything is gray.
Hmm.
There is no black and white. And so in that sense, what's holding you back? There's
Yeah.
nothing you can't do.
Yeah. I love that. Let's go back to this pivotal moment where you knew that your previous career was maybe not your future career. I think a lot of us can easily identify that. Whether we acknowledge it and whether we address it is another thing. But identifying that sometimes is very easy. We can feel it in our bones. We can feel it in our soul that we are doing the work that we love to do, or we're called to do, or we're not. Um, Standing at that moment and knowing that you needed to make a shift, what were some of the options that you entertained? Because I'm assuming that, starting a business and a jewelry business was maybe not option 1A, or maybe it was a part of a list of other things that you were looking at doing. Talk to us about some of the other options you were looking at and how you applied some criteria to your next step forward.
So at that point, all I knew was I wanted to do art and design, and I didn't know what was out there, and I didn't know what was available. So I just went and did everything to tell the truth. So the first option was I went as an apprentice to a modern art painter, and I painted to kind of figure out. I was teaching art to his students, and I was trying to figure out what it is, what this landscape is, and what it is that drives me, and what it is I want to do. Um, so I applied to design school, and at this point, I was very disillusioned with um, degrees and that like earning like any sort of degree and education as such. I was like, well, I studied all this, but where did it get me? I'm still confused. I still don't know what I want to do. I'm really good at being in school, but out of school, it doesn't really help me. Um, so I just approached it as, okay, I know fashion design. I can do this, and I know I can be independent doing this. So I went to design school in Delhi, and I did not know Hindi.
Hmm.
So I learned, and I went there so I could. There, they give you access to actual embroiders who do all the embroidery, who do all the stitching for all the bigger companies. And so I wanted to learn the parameters that I could tweak to suit what I wanted. So I went to design school there, and after I graduated, I did a couple of projects. I worked with fair trade, and that was great because I think fair trade was just trying to kind of branch out in Chicago. I was in Chicago. My my husband then was in Chicago, so I moved there, and I tried. I connected with fair trade in Chicago, and I was able to be on their co-chair for their benefits and also work with all the different um, the kind of the different companies that came under that umbrella.
Hmm.
And it gave me a taste of you're at that point you're wearing multiple hats. You're taking photographs, you're kind of designing it from they're showing you this is what our t-shirts do. How do we make products, or let's do window design. And so it kind of showed me everything that was out there and whether I wanted to do what I wanted to do. um, Metalsmithing, funnily enough, was because I couldn't find the jewelry I wanted to wear. And so I went for metalsmithing classes, and that was almost 12 years ago. And I got completely obsessed with it, and it's been great. I did, to keep up with my fair trade projects, I did do commercial projects in between. Um, so yeah, kind of balanced out.
So
But
yeah, I mean, you knew that you set the vision of working in design, You knew that art and design was where you were headed, and then you went off and just tasted a bunch of things, right? I mean, that sounds kind of like, again, the no straight lines mentality is not drawing that straight line until you have to or you must, and maybe potentially never drawing a straight line again. So tell us a little bit about your world today, because I know no straight lines is not the only mission that you have. Your focus and your passion is art and design, but maybe the broader mission or the broader vision is helping people. So tell us a little about what you're doing today, and if trying things and kind of getting into art and design was the gateway, what has it led your career to today?
So, well, once the lockdown happened, as for everyone, it kind of changed what I was thinking about. Till then, it was jewelry, jewelry, jewelry. Um, and then after that, it was, how do I teach my son? He's stuck at home with
Yeah.
me. We're both kind of driving each other nuts. This is not working. We kind of have to figure out what to do. Um, so I reached out to a really good friend of mine, Christine, and she's a gate teacher, and she's amazing. And we both at that point had this whole idea of how our kids can grow so much, but they don't have the tools and they don't have the critical thinking. Um, and we were like, okay, let's start this pod. Let's start this kind of a setup where we can give them or we can teach them these skills. We can teach them how to paint with perspective, and lifelong skills, not just let's paint a picture, we're done. Or this is how you make a 3D, this is how you do a 3D scape, you know. Or I had a class at metalsmithing with first and second grade students, and they use the saw way better than some of my older students who are like in their 30s. And it's amazing what kids can do. And
Hmm.
that, I think, my son's kind of push me into that educational spectrum, and that's where we're at now, is to try and bring all sorts of skills that are interdisciplinary, because it's, again, there's no, you shouldn't, like, there's no label of, math is like this or science is like that. It's so, there's so much of crossing between all these disciplines, and you should let that go. And I've always been the student that never does what the teacher says. So I'll come up with this absolutely insane project and say, this is what I want to do. And usually I don't get to do it. And so this is supposed to be like a safe haven space where the kids can come in, and they come in with an idea of like, oh, I'm going to build this, or I'm going to make this leather purse. And we're like, okay, let's figure out how we're going to do it. And so that's how we go with it. And I really enjoy giving them that an opportunity to grow at the way they want to grow and learn how they want to learn, but still having all the
Yeah.
skills and the confidence that they can do whatever they want to do.
Okay, so I want to clarify. So you're physically at a school, right? And I believe you're sitting there now, right? Or is it a camp?
So
What is it?
we tied up with there's a Heritage Ranch Museum in
Ranch. Yep.
Canitas, and it's a huge ranch space in the middle, and it bordering around it are all the buildings that existed when the first settlers came into Encinitas. And they have all the tools, so they do like butter churning and basket weaving of the olden times. During COVID, we wanted a space that was outside for the kids, that was safe space,
Right.
6 distance. So we were able to tie up with them and kind of rearrange the outdoor space to be very child friendly and COVID friendly. And so that
Hmm.
really, so this is the inside, which is kind of all um, the kids are all outside.
Hmm. That's
Kids are all
cool.
outside. Um, we're building automatons today, so that's fun.
So would you say that this is the marriage of your, let's call it your practitionership in art and design and your vision of helping people? I mean, this is essentially those two things coming together, no?
I think so. I think it's I think what I tend to do is like whenever I can do something, I usually just jump on it. This happened to be the perfect marriage of the design elements as well as science elements, as well as helping whoever I have to help, and
Yeah.
the way that I'm really happy doing it. So, everything is ticked off. So this, I would say that, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's incredible. And just let's put some time perspective to this. When did you decide to leave the engineering space, the science space, and move into art and design?
so I, so the first year of my PhD in IBIS, which is interdisciplinary biological sciences, you are able to do a rotation. So at the end of all the rotations, I decided that towards the end, I was really unhappy. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to
And
look at,
when was that? What year was that?
ooh, 2000. And
Okay.
it's, I was 21.
Okay, because I'm trying to put some perspective in like how many years did it take for you at this real critical pivotal moment in your life?
So maybe like
And
16 years ago.
yeah, and I think that's really important for people, right? You know, we sometimes go through our career and we come to this point of I know that there's got to be some change.
Yeah.
But the world that we're living in today says that that change could and should happen overnight. And I'm here to tell you, and Sandhya, I know you are as well too, that is far from the truth. Like it takes time to go and to taste and to try and to identify, you know, your vision and your practitionership and try to marry the two. And for you, that took 16 years. It's incredible.
And it was super scary. It was very scary. There,
Yeah.
the smiling face doesn't say all the ups and downs that you go through. There are really good ups, and then there's really bad downs because you're
Sure.
rethinking, why did I do this? Why did I leave my safe spot where I know it's an easy life and I didn't have to worry about what's happening the next day if I
Mhm.
was making the right choice. But I think now looking back, if everything happens for a reason, and if I hadn't gone through everything I went through, I wouldn't have made the connections I made, and neither would I have been the person who I ended up becoming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really incredible. Um, you know, again, as quickly as things are moving today, I think the perspective is really important just in terms of how long it takes to make a critical move like that. Um, what are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of your future endeavors? Because something tells me it's not going to be a straight path.
Of course not. um, One aspect is to continue with Collab Commons is what we call our after school program or just our educational programs. So we want to go forth with that, and we also want to build a community for the students, for the kids as well as the teachers at some point, because I think half the reason I started it was because I was in Spanish Village Art Center, and a lot of the artists there were always doing in-person classes, and they weren't able to navigate Zoom to get online, and so
Hmm.
we were helping them get online. So I was tutoring the artists to come online and then go through their process, and we were also getting the students to come in to be taught. So we want to go forward and kind of have actual artists with skills, with individualistic skills and different perspectives to be teaching kids in their neighborhood. These are the local artists. Everyone has a different perspective, and you can talk to them about what they're doing and how they're leading their life. And these are all options that are available to you. And you don't have to find out after 16 years like I did, but you could probably actually talk to artists in person,
Yeah.
architects. And we just want to build a whole community of professionals who can teach kids
Hmm.
what they're doing, how they're doing, and why they're doing it. So they have that exposure. Um, that
Yeah.
that is one.
That's great.
I'm sure I'll come up with a couple more.
Yeah, no, but you know what? I think sometimes it takes a while, if not a couple decades, for us to really refine our vision. And once that then comes into view and we're allowed to have that retrospective look at like what worked and what didn't,
Mhm.
and we've got the ability to take risk and take chance, like that's the perfect equation for you really making moves. And it sounds like that's absolutely what you've been able to do over the course of the last now, 16 years. So we have a question that just came through, and I want to make sure that we bring it forward here before we wrap up. Oh, this is so great because this is a question that I was going to ask as well too. What are some of the daily practices that keep you grounded, while you're navigating through the all of this change and trying to reinvent yourself? What keeps you rooted? What keeps you grounded?
Um, I think the biggest issue is when you have too many ideas and you feel kind of lost in all of this and everything is pulling you in a different direction. Knowing when to stop was the hardest lesson I had to learn, because I want to do everything. I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. I want to do this. But it was knowing when to stop, when I had nothing, when I was like working on fumes and everything was falling apart. Um, so I've learned that. I mean, I'm still learning, but I keep aside time to just exercise or just time to myself, because you're always giving whenever you're working. You're giving to the environment because you're talking to someone. It's
Hmm.
emotional. You don't realize how drained you are, but you are drained at the end of a conversation because you're invested in that
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So just realizing you need a break and you need to take that time and you need to stop yourself. This is a great idea, but and we can do it at another time. We don't have to do it now. And the other thing that really helped me was, I was kind of a perfectionist, and I I always felt like I had to do all these things. And so someone told me this absolutely amazing sentence, and that helps me. He said, replace "I should be doing this" with "I could do this." Like
Mm,
if I wanted to, I could do it. Like I could do this,
sure.
instead of "this is something I should be doing. I have to do
Hmm.
these things." No, it's an
Hmm.
option. So tho- I hope that helps. Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. Maybe one last question. What are some of the resources or tools, books, podcasts that you follow that allow you to stay open and creative when it comes to planning and plotting your career?
So I have been obsessed with Girl Boss Radio. I don't know if anyone has the podcast.
Can't say I know it, but it sounds amazing.
It's amazing because it actually has talks about how other women, other entrepreneurs are going through these issues and how they deal with different aspects of their life. One one of that like one that was one I heard. She had she had done a talk and she had said, something else which I thought was great was you can't pour from an empty cup. Like
Yeah.
you have to have something inside to give into your
Hmm.
business, because the business doesn't run, or nothing runs unless you have that energy and that excitement, because that's what drives you forward. And so
Yeah.
if you're completely pouring yourself out and you don't have any energy anymore, there's no way you can go forward. So you
Right.
have to give yourself time to recuperate and fill yourself up before you start again. And it's that podcast and the series are amazing, and it's really helped me. So I hope that helps everyone else as well.
Wonderful. Okay. Shout out to Girl Boss Podcast. We'll have to check it out for sure. So, as we wrap up, Sandhya, I know a lot of people are going to want to follow you and follow your journeys. How can people connect with you? How can people get in touch?
I have an Instagram called No Straight Lines, and you're welcome to send me a text there. Or I have my Gmail account is No Straight Lines again at gmail.com. Yeah, I'd love to collaborate, and I'm always open to new ideas or just talking, because it's hard when you're going through this. And since I've been there multiple times, I kind of get how it is, and that's how
Yeah.
that's why I enjoy the studio at Balboa, is because I have people come in and we just talk, and it's got nothing to
Mhm.
do with the jewelry. It's all about, you just need to be heard, and you just need to be surrounded by people who want to hear what you have to say, and I think that's really important.
Wonderful. Well, I know there are a lot of people tuning in, whether it's live today or down the road, that are going to be really excited about what you have to say. Sandhya, I think your journey is um, a really inspiring one, because it's not planned, and it's not a straight line. It truly isn't. And the way that you've navigated, I think, is also very inspiring. The way that you don't necessarily have an answer for everything, I think, is also very authentic. And it's what's allowed you to really set the path for you and your career. And I think we can all learn a lot from some of the decisions and the way that you've made the decisions. I also love the concept of could over should. That's something that I'm absolutely gonna take with me. There's a big difference between I can do something and I should do something. So really appreciate the nuggets, really appreciate the perspective. Welcome to the Navigating Now community. We're so thrilled to have you. I'm sure there's going to be some folks that will reach out to you, and we hope to have you back sometime soon.
Thank you, Anthony. I've really enjoyed being here, and this conversation
Wonderful.
was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. And we would like to share our upcoming guests. So we go live every Thursday at 3 o'clock Central. We are moving into the end of June and July, where we're going to be taking a particular focus on culture. And we're really, really excited about the upcoming series of speakers. We have two very special ones in the next couple weeks. June 24th, we'll be going live with Valentina Park from the Wall Street Journal. She's going to be talking about a value-based team and building a team through values. We do a lot of work in the value space these days, and they're just really coming to the forefront of how we build and grow teams. And then July 1st, we will be welcoming one of our own. Anjana Raj from Thoughtium is going to be joining us, a consultant extraordinaire and also a specialist and a practitioner in the culture space. So she's going to be speaking to us about navigating workplace culture in a post-pandemic world. So some extremely relevant topics coming up with some incredibly inspiring leaders. Sandhya, thank you again for your perspective and stepping into the discussion today. We will see everybody back here next Thursday at 3, and we hope you all have a good rest of the afternoon. So long.